Please welcome Randy Howder, Principal with Gensler.
Hi there, I'm Randy Howder, Co-Managing Director of Gensler's San Francisco office. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about the future of work because we're in a really interesting time. For the first time in modern history, work and place have been consciously uncoupled, as they say. Seemingly overnight, we all started to work from home and realized, hey, this isn't so bad. Our teams are surprisingly nimble and we're all able to keep the creative juices flowing. But after more than 4 months, most of us are dying to get back to the office, at least for a few days per week. In fact, we completed a work from home survey last month that said more than 70% of us plan to go back to the office as soon as we can, and to make the office our primary place of work. About the same number of people cited missing their colleagues as the primary driver for returning to the office. More than half said they are finding it harder to keep up to speed with what's going on, and that it's harder and harder to collaborate on creative ideas when we're all physically distant. But most people do appreciate that there are benefits to working from home. In fact, only a very small minority of people, about 12%, want to work from home 5 days per week. That's about the same number of people who want to work in the office 5 days a week. The vast majority of people, however, again, about 70%, want to work from home between 1 and 3 days per week. What this means is that the big difference when we do go back to the office is that our workplaces forevermore will be hybrid workplaces, meaning they will be part of an ecosystem of work environments that will be much more highly tailored to individual patterns and preferences. This points to a much more radically inclusive workplace than ever before, because it recognizes us as individuals. We can design our work lives to better reflect ourselves. This hybrid workplace better accommodates things like neurodiversity, people who are introverts and extroverts, and everything in between, people with different family responsibilities and family structures, people from different backgrounds, people from generational differences and different living situations. Not everyone has benefited to working from home, and now we have much more of a choice. We're calling this the connected workplace experience, meaning our physical work environments, the office, the home, and other places will be much more tightly connected and coordinated to provide us with a much more seamless experience when we toggle between locations. What I'm about to walk you through are some ideas we've been working on for this new hybrid type of connected workplace experience. And it's really built on 5 drivers: health and well-being, inclusivity, seamless experiences, community connections, and work anywhere, anytime. Some of these spaces will start to look both familiar and different. You know, an elevator lobby, a reception becomes a reset threshold where one can dust off one's commute and step into a refreshing oasis that calms and centers you for the day ahead. Things like circadian light, ambient music, green walls, plants, interesting materials allow you to kind of make that mental disconnect between the outside world and the world ahead of you. Similarly, we've all been glued to our phones and devices throughout this pandemic. We all have Zoom fatigue. We need moments to switch off, to take a breath from the digital and clear one's mind. So spaces like this that allow people to do so will be increasingly at the fore. Similarly, we've learned from the pandemic that being outdoors with people is much safer than being indoors with people. So what if our workplaces could take advantage of an indoor-outdoor lifestyle? Instead of tables and dining chairs or benches outside on a roof terrace, what if those spaces can become really hardworking outdoor meeting spaces where we can, as individuals, take a call in the sunshine with our teams, collaborate while we increase endorphins and enjoy the outdoors. Similarly, you know, some of us like to walk around while we're in meetings or walk around the block. What if that idea of kind of blowing off some steam, making physical activity part of your daily routine becomes part of your work life, where we integrate architecture and nature, blending indoors and outdoors. When we're in the office, we won't know who's there on any given day or who might be working from home from our team. So what if the entry to our work area was a personalized dashboard that allows for those seamless connections between those who are on site and those who are remote? So proximity sensors show who's nearby, who's in the office that day, who's working from home. What is the social media feed or the kind of content that everyone's working on together? Where are people sitting for that given day? This could be a nice welcome for those who are there to connect those who aren't. Similarly, something as casual as getting a cup of coffee, we all like to have those casual encounters in a kitchen, but what if this kitchen is now connected to those who are at home? What if there's iPads or portals that can connect you and you can have coffee with someone halfway around the world or someone who's down the block at home? Similarly, the classic photo frame of our dog or kids or family on our desk becomes much more of a content feed of what's going on outside of the office, non-work related topics that foster conversation and get people to get to know one another. Virtually or in person, it's all about bumping into people and expanding our networks. That's why we come to the office. We also come to the office for education. So interactive training rooms that combine, voice activated navigation, dynamic presence. It's a mobile pop-up space that can drive global connections across various offices and geographies, becomes a networking and community space. Similarly, the classic conference room gets a redo as a flexible conference space. So maybe tables and chairs in a classic conference table situation, as in the lower right here, go away. And it becomes much more about a mixed reality attendance. So physical and digital collide to create the next generation of the conference room. It's designed for flexibility and bringing those who are in person in the room together with those who aren't. How many times have we all been in a conference room where someone dials in from home and they're quickly forgotten about because they're on a screen on the wall or buried behind content on that screen? So we have to be really conscious about equaling the playing field for those who are there or those who aren't. Similarly, especially with creatives, that kind of in-person brainstorm, virtual charrette becomes really, really important. We're all there to create, and the minute someone's not there, are they missing out, right? How can we combine the best of in-person collaboration with virtual tools that allow everybody to have that seamless connection? So impromptu team collaboration is made easy with a studio or neighborhood breakout space that detects who's there and loops in virtual attendees. So you don't have to, be present to win. Similarly, this kind of idea of a parallel processing space, sitting down next to somebody and working on something is sometimes the best way to get something done. But again, why are we biasing that experience towards those who are there in person? How can we think about those who aren't or those who are working on a team in another geography? So, smaller breakout spaces that support one-on-one collaboration, that sort of sitting next to someone and working on something together, whether they're there or not. And then, on the social side, we all, have taken to, buying Pelotons, working out alone with a virtual crowd somewhere out there in the world. But what if you sort of replicate that experience with your company or your colleagues? So an in-person fitness studio that broadcasts to the person who's working from home, who has their own home setup. So being part of the action, whether you're there or not. And then similarly, for those who aren't there, creating kind of a digital twin of our office. So, those casual collisions in the kitchen, knowing where people are, dropping into a meeting or a workshop, being able to see what's going on. And, a lot of us are visual people, not living off of an Outlook calendar, but living off of a virtual model of the office. So I can walk around and drop into a session that interests me. And then similarly, what if pieces of our office could follow us home to our neighborhoods? So how can we infuse, our company culture or your office culture into your city's everyday experience? So it could be a venue for engaging local businesses, local communities. It could just be co-workers who live in a similar part of town getting together in a smaller setting because nobody likes sitting at home working alone. But also people don't miss their commutes. So could this be some sort of middle ground? So those are just a few of the ideas we're thinking about. And what I think this points to is a really bright future for workplace. A lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic have been predicting that the workplace is dead, or that when we do go back to the office, we're all going to sit in private offices or super tall cubicles. But I think what we see is a promise of this really integrated experience that allows us to, build our networks and reach out to our colleagues in ways that we've never been able to do before. So I think the future of work is really, really bright. And I'm really excited to hear your questions and get your feedback. So thank you. Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here live to answer a few questions. I know what I presented was, in some cases, kind of far out there for a lot of companies, especially smaller agencies. We do have a couple of great questions. One was around kind of voice-activated office systems. I think, again, as we've been home, getting used to telling Alexa or whomever to turn things on or off or play our favorite playlist during dinner, the expectations of those types of voice-activated kind of concierge services are really going to be important in the workplace. So walking into a conference room, being able to say, hey, play my presentation or play that video or set the lighting exactly to my preference, especially if you're having a client meeting, those types of things are going to be super important. So we're definitely seeing those cropping up. And as I may have mentioned during the presentation, a lot of the trends that we are seeing now, what the pandemic has done is simply accelerated the things that were already happening. So I think we're going to see a leap of, at least 5, maybe 10 years in terms of workplace technology with things like voice-activated responses in the office. Another question, seems like we're moving away from office as a workspace and towards office as a collaboration space. Do I still think there will be a need for space to be designed for solo work? Will open offices still be the norm? I think especially for creatives, the thing that we crave about, and I mentioned in the presentation about the office, is that physical interaction, the brainstorming, the whiteboarding, the pinning things up on a board around ideas. That's really hard to do. We've all been using virtual tools. And I think that's going to be the primary driver. Conversely, we've all found that we've actually been a little bit more productive when we're having to think or write a proposal or write copy. I think we're going to find that people are going to self-select staying at home when they have primarily those tasks to do. Going into the office, it may depend on where you are in a project or a phase of a project. But I see primarily, the office was moving towards, more kind of we space, less me space. So I do see that even accelerating faster, so that most of our spaces in our offices are for being together and working on things together. And that's the primary value of that. And those individual solo tasks will probably be deprioritized a bit more. I think we may have time for a couple more questions. How do you see the future of open offices changing post-COVID, specifically for companies that don't have large budgets to reconfigure or rebuild? That includes our company. We just renovated our space, moved into a new space exactly 2 years ago in June. We don't have the money to redo our space whole hog, but I do think, and we're working on some things right now, some exciting new types of furniture and products. And then I think some of these technologies that we've been talking about are going to become cheaper and cheaper and therefore more ubiquitous. So it's more like an overlay onto existing space rather than, tearing your space down to the studs and starting over. I think for most companies, you have to evaluate where you are in the life cycle of your office space, where you are in your lease. How has working together changed for you during this pandemic? A lot of the conversations in the earlier sessions today were about how our interactions have changed. And so I think there's a lot of work out there for companies like mine to help our clients understand how they've changed as organizations and as people, um, and designing their spaces to better support them in the future. And ultimately, that's what workplaces reflect is the sort of cultural and economic conditions that we're in, and a design that responds and helps people be their very best at work. So with that, I will wrap up and thank you very much.